Welcome to episode 35 of The Martial Truth, my continuing series of interviews with Sensei Patrick McCarthy, author of the new book, Kyan Chotoku, okay, The Man and His Art, okay, excellent book, highly recommend you get it. Also author of several other books, Classical Okinawan Karate, Tanpeshu, Stories of Gichin Funakoshi, Legend of the Fist, excellent book, okay. He translated Tales of Okinawa's Great Masters by Shorin-Ryu, another excellent book. Obviously, the big one, the Bubishi, we all should have in our... And two books on the martial arts of Taira Shinken, okay, ancient Okinawan martial arts, all right? All excellent, all definitely a good idea to have them in your library. As always, appreciate the members, all right? We've hit 90 members, all right, and we're hoping some of you will consider becoming a member. We've got a lot of interesting videos up there, mostly of an instructional nature, of a teaching nature, okay? Please, if you like the video, please click that like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. And share the video. If you like it, share it, tell your friends, let them know what's going on, all right? So without any further ado, here's Patrick McCarthy talking about the research that went into the Kyan book, and several things related to Isshin-Ryu. Okay, so my Isshin-Ryu friends, you're probably going to really like this episode. All right, enjoy. So let's get into a little bit about the book. So first off, I read it cover to cover. I think it's fantastic. I think it's great.
Good. Yeah.
Some of the things, the first section, the translation of the Nagamine article, I'd read already because I have that book.
Yep.
It was good to read it again and refamiliarize myself with it. But, a couple of things, the chapter...
Sorry, can I just say,
sure.
You do know, or I hope the readers will come to know that what's inside this book has been taken from all kinds of other sources.
Right.
Keep in mind, I did the translate. Nagamine Sensei asked me specifically to translate his Tales of Okinawa. Right. So I could not ignore what he'd... So, and of course, I had a wonderful opportunity to train directly under Nagamine Shoshi back in the mid-80s. So that was a must.
Right.
And certainly, Mutsu Mizuho, Mutsu changed his name to Takara, okay? And then Miki Nisaburo or Jisaburo, 1929, visit here, 1930 publication in Kempo Gaisetsu, of course, and I did the translation like 25 years ago. Right. And Joe, of course, did the translation from the 1942 Karate Omoide, my memories of karate.
Right.
I did the 1936 Minute of the Meetings from Toyama Kankin's book, again, 25 years ago. So I had to bring that in because Ken was there.
Right.
And since the time that I published that, where I used the 1937 group photo of the settlement of Kihon Kata in Okinawa, I feel sorry. I kind of feel bad about that. I made it perfectly clear that picture, with Miyagi Chojin and Ken and Yaku and all that was not the 1936 meeting of
right.
But now it's been used every time since as the
right.
But I actually then subsequently had discovered from going through the archives here in the newspaper an actual photograph used to discuss or announce the meeting, the roundtable meeting, and which actually took place in 2 days, by the way, not one. So technically, the 25th and the 26th should be karate days here. It's only the 25th, but I found that photograph, and then I had through AI technology, I'd enhanced it and colorized it, and I published it with this as well. So you get that. So these are all the things that are part and parcel of what the meeting is. Plus, lots of testimonies from Kinjo Hiroshi and my meeting with guys like Hirakatsuya and
that's what I like about it. It's the combination of all these different people writing different things about Kyan. Now, some of them I read. I know the one Graham Noble one I definitely read, but I don't think I read the other one. So that was new to me, which was nice.
Graham Noble, I got to tell you, this guy is so back in the 80s, people would probably remember him because of his liaison with FAI, Fighting Arts International, Terry O'Neill.
Right.
And look, I'll venture to say that the guy who was arrested as a pedophile years ago, Harry Cook,
sure.
90% of his research came from Graham Noble, and Graham never got much recognition for that. But so I made sure that he got lots of recognition. I used both sets of articles that Graham had written. I think one of them had never been published before, I think.
So that might, so that's probably the one, obviously, that I didn't see.
How about the Sonabe Shozen article by Charlie Gooden?
Good. Yeah.
How
listen,
isn't it amazing?
Listen, my personal favorite in the book is the Karate for Milk. The Karate for Milk article.
Oh yeah, this is the show. This is Sonabe Shozen. Sorry, yeah.
Oh my God. So so here I am, and now again, I'm going to get into Isshin-Ryu a little bit from my standpoint. And again, I highly recommend this book. I mean, it's a treasure trove of information on Kyan Sensei. So for all my Isshin-Ryu friends, this is a must-have book. So I read it, and this guy studied with Kyan for 12 years, and he mentioned certain things. Okay. He mentions that Kyan only taught weapons to certain people, and he didn't teach weapons at necessarily agricultural school, but he taught them basically.
No, agricultural school and police department, purely recreational karate. Just I'm sure that he was doing that to make money, So
now me as an Isshin-Ryu practitioner. Okay, so I have Tatsuo on video in 1958 doing what we believe is the Kyan version of Tokumine no Kun, because the beginning is different. It's different from the later version in the 66 film, where Tatsuo had made the beginning of all the 3 Bo kata, 2 he learned from Taira, and 1 he learned from Kyan. He decided to make the Tokumine the beginning the same as the 2 Taira kata, which is fine. Luckily, we have that video. So I know for a fact that Tatsuo and the whole Shimabukuro family were on Kyushu throughout the whole war. So Kichiro Sensei told me that from 41 to 45, they're in Kyushu. The father put them on a boat, left Okinawa for safety reasons to protect his family. So he's gone. So now, okay, Kyan dies in 45, correct? Okay, so that means Tatsuo learned Tokumine before 41.
No other choice had to do it that way.
So now the other thing is some of the movements in that version of Tokumine, we don't see in the Nakazato version of Tokumine. And I'm sorry, I can't for the life of me think that Tatsuo's coming up with the bow where we flip it over and do the big swing. I firmly believe that that's what he was taught by Kyan. The other thing is we have Tatsuo doing in 58 Kyan no Sai. Now, the first generation guys referred to it as Saya. They just said they learned Saya.
Yeah.
But again, for years, we kind of thought that this wasn't a kata taught by Kyan. We were told that it was techniques that Kyan had taught, and that Tatsuo probably put together in a pattern, right?
As did everybody.
Right. And then the other weapon he mentions is nunchaku, which for me, I just sent someone in Isshin-Ryu, a very senior Dan, a question about that. But when I was on Okinawa and I asked Kichiro Sensei, Tatsuo's son, what weapons are in Isshin-Ryu, and he said bosai, tuifa, and nunchaku. And I said, okay, so I know the kata for the other ones. I said, what's the kata for nunchaku? He says, oh, there's no kata, just techniques. Okay, so I don't know if Tatsuo was ever teaching nunchaku. I'm going to try to find that out and investigate it a little more. But, it's the same thing with like our Nahanshi. Our Nahanshi, we start and we go to the left. But in Tamari Nahanshi, which I've seen videos on the Tamari channel, they also go to the left. So they go to the left too, certain ones.
Oh, Tamari, yeah.
So again, like I say, okay, let's say, is it possible that Kyan also taught Tatsuo Nahanshi, even though he didn't pass it on to, Zenro Shimabukuro and Joe and Nakazato, let's say. But the only other way I can think of that Tatsuo learned it would have to be from Motobu.
Well, there's a couple of other theories there.
And this is why I wanted to bring this up to you, because I want to get your opinion on this.
So first of all, we'll talk about Tokumine just for a minute, because it's kind of at the forefront of my thought here. Okay, so I've had so many people over here because of the all the people we've had for the thing. I've had document. This is a handwritten document. This is a 25-page handwritten document by Miyagi Chojin.
Okay.
Not to be confused with the printed version from 1936.
Okay.
This is the March 13th, 1934 actual handwritten document by Miyagi Chojin called Tote Gaisetsu. Oops, sorry. Sorry. There's the 1947 magazine with Kinjo Hiroshi on the cover.
Okay.
There's the 1948 volume 2 with Konishi and Motobu on the cover. Sorry, just kind of going through these.
No, that's fine.
Here's what we're going to be talking about today. This is the actual 1932 book of Kyan Chotoku.
Kyan's Kumite. Yes.
Kyan's Kumite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly, there was a book on kata, which was
well, we can hope for the future.
I heard thrown into the garbage in a fit of
we can hope someone runs across it somewhere in a box.
Hey, is that guy one of your teachers right there? Weichi.
He's not one of my teachers. He's really more my contemporary.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He's not one of my teachers.
It was a kind of a going away party.
He's a really nice guy. He's a super nice guy.
Lovely guy.
Yeah, very nice guy.
God, he's strong as well.
Yeah.
This was over at Jason Perry's house, going away party. The 7th annual Tyra Shinken. Okay. Great thing there. Here are the actual newspaper articles from 1898 that cite Kyan as the so-called bad boy. Okay, here's what I was going to do just a minute. And you gotta love these, because of AI technology. I was able to take some of these very rare photos that I got from the Naha City Digital Archive, by the way, of Kyan Chotoku when he was the mayor of a little village up there. The guy in the middle here was going away to San Francisco, so they're having a little going away party. But to get them in color, colorize them, and that was the thing. Sorry, let me see. And, this, I love this because I brought these out of the Bubishi. And by the way, these are you imagine after all these years, and I connect with the guy in Taiwan,
and you finally got the
original. But anyway, so you see techniques. They're not similar to what he's doing. They are identical.
Exact. Yes.
And then you see Nakazawa Join and Okara Bunne and Kyan Sensei with and then of course you Buchoki and Yamada, and you see
Tatsuo. And that's the guy who I reached out for today about the nunchaku, John Bardasev.
Did you? Oh, yeah,
I reached out to him to ask him. And the funny thing is the bottom photo where Motobu's doing the strike to the groin, which is part of his fighting drills, Tatsuo does on Steve Armstrong in the 66 film.
I saw the film, yeah.
Like, I mean, as a detective, to me, like with the Tokumine no Kun, okay, well, if Tatsuo wasn't on the island from 41, at least 41 to 45, he had to have learned it before then. Okay, well, that's Kyan's Tokumine no Kun. I'm sorry, guys. You're not going to change my mind,
Steve Armstrong was the guy who first taught me Tokumine no Kun. And taught me 1979 in Vancouver when he came up from himself. Remember, I used to fight in his... They were battles back.
The tournaments. Yeah.
But
that was blood and guts karate days, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. So, and by the way, this is the this is the photograph from the mainland. This is from Kochi Prefecture. This is the 1905 photograph that I was talking about here, where they found. This is Miyagi-Sango over here. And if you look at the very end of it over here, that's who we now. And so what I did with that was I got it colorized and blown out, and then through a long series of, largely due to my friend Scott Mertz, who had used this remarkable technology, and then Neil Simpson. God bless this guy.
He's another guy who's he's very big into it. Yeah.
And
it's amazing. It's amazing.
That's Ito-san, introduced to Ito-san, Yeah. So, but anyway, sorry. Just and look at what we did with Kyan Chotoku's father.
Yeah, amazing.
So Prince Ide, Ginwan Choho, the translator, and Kyan Chotoku.
And even the Kumite photographs. Like for me, right?
You mean these Kumite photos?
Well, that's the one. That's the famous one by Tatsuo, right?
Yeah. And then by his kid brother here,
Azo,
and to say nothing of that whole, I swore silence over that whole issue. So I'm sworn to secrecy, by the way. So, and did you like this? What I did with
Shibuya? I have. I saved it. I saved it in my stuff. Yeah. Who's that, Sensei?
That's Kyan's wife.
Kyan's
you probably wouldn't recognize because the picture of her was terrible and and tiny and black and white. But I did some cosmetic cleanup.
Yeah, that picture's pretty good. That one
looks lovely.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to Tokumine Kensho one day here. We're having some refreshments. And,
right.
And I say this and this, and I said, "Oh, Sensei, sorry, I got to go." Some people, actually Sherry Adams and these people, Shobashi Shorin-Ryu coming over, and they want to go see the Kyan Chotoku haka. And he goes, "Oh, you mean the monument over at the Hija near the Hija Bridge and the Hija River?" And I went, "No, that's Nakazato Joe's over there. This is the actual haka's." No, nobody. I said, "Yeah." I said, "I go there all the time." He goes, "Really?" He'd never been there.
He'd never been there.
I took him over to hear.
Wow.
I got to tell you, sadly, we have an expression here in Okinawa. When the weather changes, we say, kata bui, which means, "Oh, don't worry, the weather will change very soon."
Right.
I tell you, with beautiful weather, we pulled the car up down and said, "Got to kind of walk up a little bit of an embankment," and it's in the middle of nowhere, middle of the city, by the way, over in Ishikawa. And it just started pouring rain. My God, it was like, and something, Sensei just, I said, "Sensei, I'll get you an umbrella one." But here's my apologies. Here's what I was actually looking for. I was looking for, so these two photographs are, they were first published many years ago by Nakamoto Masahiro from the Bunbukan.
Sure.
He was another student, Harushinkan and Chibara Shoshin.
I trained with him once in Long Island.
Remarkable historian, fantastic guy.
A great guy. Yes.
Great. Yeah. I went to China with him. One of the trips I went to China, Fujian. He was on the trip with his son and a delegation of people. That's where we learned. We studied dog boxing and reason for another interview.
Right.
But the guy on the left here is you can read it. Karebana Gisa. Karebana Gisa, and the other one was his. I'll just go here. This is the guy who took care of Tokumine. Who took care of Tokumine Peichin when he was sent. We'll just use was requested
to
go to
rather forcefully to go someplace else.
And so by the time Kyan Chotoku would go there in late 20s, he would hook up with this other guy, Hokubuta, who was the relative, and they said, "Look at Kyan's already dead." And here's what I heard, and this is Tokumoto Sensei, who actually went to Ishigaki. Actually, there was a kid I met who was one of Don Chaplin's students up in Canada. Just a teenager when I knew him. His name is Chuck Boyd. He, I guess he's stayed with his training, and he enjoys the historical aspects of the art. And he was over on a list. You and I are both members on a list with David from South America is over there. American guy who works in South America, East. And he said to me, "Oh, you might want to get in touch with Tokumoto Kensho. He's been to Ishigaki." And based on what Chuck suggested, that's how I reached out and contacted. And then I realized, my God, this is Lars Anderson. I met Lars. My first seminar I taught in Copenhagen in 1995. Lars was part of that, along with a bunch of other guys I've maintained friendship with over the years. So it turned out to be really all home week over there. But he said to me, he said when he went there, he said, yes, they still carry on the Tokumine tradition. He says, but it's become intertwined with their annual matsuris, their festivals. And he said, with no disrespect intended, he said, it's kind of become more of a dance, and more of a, a kind of a ritualized representation of the past, which is what a lot of this village stuff that we see around here is a lot like that. And he said he retaught them Tokumine no Kon. But
So-
anyway, so
Kensho Tokumura, I met in the 90s in California, and he did a question and answer session with a Vinkler. And I asked him a point blank question. I said, so how often did Tatsuo train with Miyagi? And his response was, oh, well, Miyagi was kind of far, just geographically on the island, right? So he said, so probably not so much. You know, he went there on occasion, but not so much. And then he goes without me prompting, he says, he was always over by Kyan's house. That's what Tokumura told me back in the 90s. So I always remember that as because he says because Kyan lived very close, right? And again, sometimes we look for these more fantastical reasons, right, of why people can't, they can't. But sometimes it's just distance. It's this guy was close, so I went to him, and this guy's far, so I could only go to him a couple of times, right? So,
well, the interesting part there is. And by the way, I learned how to say this living in Japan. All these are we foreigners and you Japanese, we Japanese and you foreigners. That's a term I learned here, by the way. I had to make sure that was deeply ingrained in my psyche, by the way.
Right.
But if you lived across the street from the karate master, and mom and dad wanted you to train, where do you think you practice? My favorite is this: we trained in the secrecy of nightfall down at the beach, away from prying eyes,
or the graveyard,
or
the graveyard.
Yourself back on,
right,
at
right,
9 o'clock at night,
Right.
And another reason they train at night is you're away from the melanoma. Sorry,
right.
I live from Australia. You don't want that sun beating down on your head here, So, but you see, the story sounds better than the truth,
Right.
And
right.
Guy says, yes, but the meaning of this punch. I go, something. I make a joke and I say, I was deeply moved by the words of the American Zen monk who said, everybody's got a remarkable plan until they get hit in the face with a left hook. Oh, Mike Tyson. And sometimes a punch is just a punch. A guy grabs you and you just hit him in the face.
By the way, your book, you have the fist. The fist we talked about in my living room that time. Remember that you said Nakazato showed you, Sensei showed you that Kyan taught him that?
Wait.
So going back to this fist. Okay, so I don't know if you remember the conversation, but we're sitting in my living room and we're talking about the different fist configurations in the Bubishi. Yep. And we're doing this Ippon Ken, we're doing this, we're doing all these different things. And you go, let me show you this fist that Joe and Nakazato showed me. Yep. And then you show me, and I go, what? And I make the fist, and I say, Sensei Sherman Harrell, who studied with Tatsuo very early on, sure. He said, Sherman Harrell told me, he said, Mike, I don't know why he showed me this fist, but he just came up to me the one day and showed me this fist and said, you strike with these two knuckles, and it's into the heart region where you strike. That's what Sherman Harrell told me. So here we got Ed. No, so what we got was we both looked at each other and said, now we have confirmation from two Kyan students about the same fist.
So by the way, just as a matter of fact, I don't know, Sherman Harrell died before I had a chance to meet him, but a lot of guys that I taught seminars for in Isshin-Ryu groups would say, oh my God, you and Sherman Harrell got along like a house on fire,
Two things. One, totally
that's a set of photographs you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So can I just say something, because this is so all these guys I've been meeting and talking to about this, and this fits right in with the Bubishi, by the way, acknowledging the fact that the Bubishi would have been, if only privately owned by select individuals, a book that referenced all that which there is to know. And you know as well as I do, a lot of people who would become pioneers, they didn't know everything,
Right,
and you think about something, it was not until I stumbled across this Funagoshi Gichin quote this at the end of his 1922 book about this newspaper article from November of last year. Okay, this book is published in 22. November last year will be November 1921. So I dive into the digital archives up at the in Tokyo at the my God, my eyes. I looked for months, I couldn't find it. Joe Swift found it for me, by the way. written in November 1921 by Sasaki Gogai that talks about, you remember now, the Roaring Twenties. You got to remember now, Japan was literally dragged out from the
feudal age,
oven of the Dark Ages by a group of out-of-the-box, upwardly mobile businessmen who decided Japan needed to change. And in about the period of 50, dragged them out of the back ages to become one of the most powerful nations on the planet. So that whole era provides just a wonderful resource from which to gain such deep insight if you take the blinders off and you are not restricted by I don't know, I'll have to check to see what my sensei says. That might not be true, you know. But if you become a source of authority yourself, you no longer need other than the fact that you might need to test the veracity of something, so you want to put it out there so even your detractors or critics can get a chance to have a go at it. You know, otherwise you got to pay for that type of thing these days, you know. And that way you look at the political, the cultural, the social, financial parts of the culture in which this other activity is going on, and you can make some pretty interesting deductions by that. So anyway, the fists, from what I heard, was this. Sasaki Gogai says in that article, when everybody goes, wow, two things happened in 1921 that had this remarkable impact on the growth and direction of karate here in Japan. The guy goes, oh, what's that? He goes, well, on the 6th of March, 1921, Kanakenwa, an Okinawan who was adopted by a military family, naval military family on the mainland, brought up, became the commander of the fleet in those days, which was two battleships built by the Americans and the British, by the way, would be the Katori and the Kashima, same as the Katori Shintaro, Kashima Shintaro temples. And they were the largest battleships on the planet. And this little Okinawan guy, who had been adopted by a military family, and who's one of whose mentors would also become a mentor for the crown prince, especially during his coming of age ceremony, which is 20 years old, by the way. And they say, this kid's going to do something that no one else has ever done in Japanese history. We're going to sail him off to the Western world and let him sow his royal oats with King George and the princesses and counts and viscounts over there. And one stop on the way will be Okinawa. And that was because the guy who'd mentored the prince, who was the father of who was also the mentor of Kanakenwa, would say, let's stop at Okinawa on the way by. And of course, this is where he gets the chance to visit Shuri Castle, plant a tree, do all kinds of other cultural things. And by the way, for the folks who might be interested in that subsection of studies, you can find a book written by a young lady, a naval officer here some years ago. It's called The Emperor's Captain is what it's called. Okay. And it's in Japanese, but hey, look, with ChatGPT, AI or DeepL, you can translate all that stuff today, like other researchers do. And so that happened. That was a big deal, and the prince saw karate for the first time. Okay. And by the way, we have some reason to believe that Ken was actually there as well. And then, one more last thing on that. When I was reading Kanakenwa's memoirs about this, I came across an interesting comment that he made where he said, I was so pleased to see the Crown Prince so happy that day because he was using his new German camera. Now, I thought it was a Leica or Leica or something like that.
Leica, probably.
So now, we've only ever seen one or two pictures from that era. We see the picture of Funagoshi Gichin with a bunch of guys in the front. And we think one of the guys who was the Naha school student at the time was the guy who would later, in 1932, be the partner of Kyan Chotoku. In his book on the two-person drills. I think Kanimoto or Kanimoto. And but at the same time, you see shots of kids doing nai hanshi up on a stage with all these massive people. Some people say, oh, we think that's later, that's 1927 or 1937 or something like that. You know something? I think that it might be 1921 to tell you the truth. I mean, they're just the same. It's the same people, the same amount of but whether it is or whether it isn't, the important fact is that the Crown Prince took 1 million photographs,
Right.
none of which we've ever seen. So I wrote a letter out to the. You can write to the imperial family here.
Sure.
Not that they answer. I never got a response back, by the way. I'll put an answer out there, and maybe someone else listening to this or reading our research. I talk about it in this book as well.
Okay.
Maybe someone there might have some more clout.
Right.
Jason Perry,
Right.
through the military to go in the back door there and see if we might see some of those March 6 photographs taken before his trip up. Anyway,
Right.
so there's not the March 6. Now, over in your part of the world, former part of the world, in New Jersey, also in 1921, Jack Dempsey fights, well, in our language, we say George Carpenter. Unless en français tabarnak, we say Georges Carpentier, who was also a savant expert, but also, and I mean, he was remarkable. And actually, I think Pathé Pacific, which had their blimp in the air, shooting the film of that fight, which is, you can see parts of it on
YouTube.
On the YouTube these days. I mean, George Carpenter would peppering him with combinations to make him feel like a safe. But I mean, Dempsey hits you once, he knocks you in the middle of last week, and Carpenter just couldn't take the punishment, and boom, round 4, he wins the fight. So the point being, these two things would make a huge impact on the Japanese culture because it's the Roaring 20s. Remember, industry, math, science, technology, education, fashion. It had all been taken from the Western world into, I'm going to say, of course, all over Japan, but Tokyo, Kansai, Kanto were the main centers of life and culture on the mainland, but specifically Tokyo.
Right.
And nowhere was this more evident than in families of wealth and position, and was university students. So this became a big deal, and baseball here is far more popular than any martial art, of course, and soccer and basketball and dancing and music and so the point being, when this film was shown in June in Tokyo, Japanese fans had never seen boxing before. They'd never seen Close Spect Impact. And they went, we want that too. Baseball, we want that. Right. And they couldn't get it. And Dempsey didn't want to go to Japan. And you must remember back in the era, and right up, and even in the post-war years, Japan was referred to as the Japs, and the Chinese were the Chinks, and all of these largely disgraceful,
derogatory terms,
comments to describe other ethnicities, of course. But that's just the way it was. He said, "I'm not going over there." And Sasaki Gogai was the guy who said, we don't have to look to the West to find the fistic traditions. Why in the island kingdom the island kingdom in the South Seas, and he goes on to talk about this tradition. And
that ends part 3 of my interviews with Sensei Patrick McCarthy, author of the new book, Kyan Chotoku, A Man and His Art. I'm pretty sure we're going to get at least 1 or 2 more from the 3-hour interview I did with McCarthy Sensei. So we're going to have at least 1 more part of this, part number 4. So I hope you look forward to that for next week. Hope you're enjoying this series. I enjoyed interviewing McCarthy Sensei. And please, again, click the like, subscribe, consider becoming a member. There's products available. You'll see them scrolling along under the video. Feel free to check them out. And I'll see you next week in the next video. Thanks.